I stared at the banner hanging across the yard reading, "Happy Birthday, Bella," with a crooked smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. Karen's chaos had turned into a full-blown spectacle, and I was right in the middle of it, every inch of my yard now a war zone. But I wasn't backing down. The crowd of neighbors and friends cheered, the drone's camera zoomed in, and I knew this was just the beginning of something much bigger than a simple backyard dispute. Suddenly, I spotted Karen across the street, her arms crossed tight, eyes glaring with pure fury. She looked like she wanted to explode. I caught her gaze, and she quickly looked away, but I saw her hands trembling behind her sunglasses. That's when I realized she wasn't just angry anymore. She was scared. For the first time, her power was slipping. I stepped forward onto my makeshift battlefield, my voice steady but loud enough to cut through the buzz. "Thanks for coming, everyone. Today's about more than just dogs or fences. It's about standing up to bullies who think they can do whatever they want. Today we show that we're not going to be pushed around." The crowd erupted in cheers. Travis, my old college buddy, gave me a nod from the sidelines, a grin spread across his face. The local news crew adjusted their cameras, ready to capture the moment that I knew would echo far beyond my backyard. Then, the unexpected happened. Karen stormed out of her house, her face flushed, and waved her phone wildly. "You're all violating my privacy. This is illegal," she shouted, voice cracking with desperation. But her words only fueled the crowd's excitement. I looked directly at her, holding up my phone, showing the footage of her own posts, her bragging about her perfect neighborhood and community spirit. The crowd gasped as they saw her own words and pictures, evidence of her hypocrisy. Karen's face turned even redder. She tried to snatch the phone from my hand, but I kept it steady. "This is what you've been doing all along. Breaking the rules, hiding behind your HOA, pretending you're the victim when you're the problem. Well, today, everyone sees the truth." The crowd's murmurs grew louder. I felt a surge of adrenaline. I wasn't just fighting for my yard anymore. I was fighting for the neighborhood's integrity. Karen's schemes, her lies, her manipulations, they were all unraveling in real time. Suddenly, 2 city officials appeared from the street, walking briskly toward us. They carried clipboards and badges, and their serious expressions told me they weren't here for a casual chat. Karen's eyes widened. She tried to intercept them, but they bypassed her, heading straight for me. "Sir," one of them said, voice firm, "we've received multiple reports about unpermitted events and possible misuse of HOA funds. We'll need to ask you some questions." I nodded, feeling a strange mix of hope and dread. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. I pulled out my phone and handed over the footage and documents I'd been collecting. The officials looked through everything, their brows furrowing. Meanwhile, Karen's face twisted with rage. She tried to argue, but the officers shook their heads. "It looks like the HOA has been neglecting its own rules, probably because certain members have been ignoring them for years." One official turned to Karen. "We're going to need to see your documentation, ma'am." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, but she had nothing to say. The moment was slipping through her fingers. She looked around desperately, then muttered, "This is a witch hunt. You can't prove anything." The officers didn't flinch. "We're just here to review the facts. And based on what we've seen, it's clear your activities have been unchecked for too long." A hush fell over the crowd. I felt a strange relief, like a storm about to pass. Karen's facade was cracking, her carefully constructed house of cards collapsing under the weight of truth. Then, as if on cue, a neighbor I hardly knew approached, clutching a folder. "I have some documents," she said quietly. "From HOA meetings, emails, everything. Karen's been doing this for years, hosting parties, breaking rules, and blaming everyone else." The official nodded, flipping through the papers. "This could be enough to open an investigation, and if what's here is true, she'll face serious consequences." Karen's face was pale now. She looked around, cornered, her smug grin replaced with a look of pure panic. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. I stepped closer, voice steady. "Karen, maybe it's time you stopped hiding behind your lies. The neighborhood deserves honesty, and I think everyone here has seen enough." In that moment, the crowd started to murmur louder. The truth was out. Karen's power was broken, and I had turned her own tactics against her. The neighborhood was waking up. As the officials prepared to leave, they looked at me and nodded. "You're doing the right thing. We'll be back with official reports soon." I looked at Karen one last time. Her eyes burned with fury, but I knew this was the end of her reign. She'd tried to turn the neighborhood against me to silence me with threats and lies. But I'd fought back with facts, courage, and a little bit of chaos. And the best part? This wasn't just a victory for me. It was a message to anyone who thought they could push others around. When you try to destroy someone's home, you better prepare for a fight you can't win. As the crowd cheered and the drone's camera zoomed out, I smiled. This was more than just a backyard battle. It was a stand for truth, justice, and a neighborhood that finally saw through the deception. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that Karen's days of domination were over. Because in the end, the truth always finds a way to come to light, and this story was only just beginning. The crowd's roar was deafening as the city officials nodded and turned away, their steps heavy with the weight of what they'd uncovered. Karen's face twisted in a mix of fury and disbelief, but she knew deep down the game was over. Her carefully crafted empire of lies was crumbling faster than she could blink. I stood there, chest heaving, eyes locked on her trembling form, knowing that the moment I'd been waiting for had finally arrived. Suddenly, from the corner of my eye, I saw her reach into her purse. Her hand trembled, clutching something small and shiny. My heart skipped a beat. Was she about to pull some last-ditch trick? I instinctively stepped back, but the crowd surged forward, blocking her escape. The tension skyrocketed. Then she pulled it out, her phone, but not to call help. No, she held it high, eyes wild, and hit record. Her lips moved in a frantic whisper, trying to spin her story, to cling to whatever shred of control she had left. But the crowd saw through her. They had seen her own posts, her own words, and now her panic only confirmed her guilt. In that split second, I realized she was trying to turn this around, to make it look like I was the troublemaker, the aggressor. She was desperate, clutching at straws, but her words fell flat. The truth was on display, clear as day. The footage, the documents, her own online confessionals, they all painted her as the real villain. Then, out of nowhere, a loud voice boomed from the crowd. Someone I hadn't noticed before. An elderly neighbor, Mr. Jennings, stepped forward, holding a thick folder. "I have more evidence," he said loudly. "Emails, photos, testimonies. Karen's been breaking rules for years and no one ever called her out." The crowd's gaze shifted, eyes now on him, then back to Karen, who was visibly shrinking under the weight of exposure. The officials looked at each other, nodding again, signaling that this was far from over. Karen's lips parted, trying to muster a rebuttal, but no words came. Her hands shook so violently she almost dropped her phone. She was cornered, exposed, and helpless. The mask of the confident dog mom had fallen away, revealing someone desperate and defeated. I took a step forward, voice steady and loud. "It's over, Karen. Your lies, your manipulations, they're out in the open now. This neighborhood deserves honesty, not deception. And I promise, this is just the beginning." My words echoed in the tense silence that followed. As the authorities prepared to leave, the crowd began to murmur in a collective realization. They had seen enough, and justice was finally catching up. Karen's reign of petty tyranny was shattered, and the neighborhood was waking up to the truth. I looked directly at her, a cold smile forming. "You tried to hide behind your rules, your HOA, your fake smile. But honesty always wins. And now, everyone knows who you really are." The crowd erupted in applause, some clapping, some simply nodding in agreement. I knew this was the turning point, the moment everything changed. Karen had played her last card, and I had just dealt her the final blow. The battle was over. But the war for this neighborhood's soul? That was just beginning. The crowd's applause faded into an eerie silence as the officials turned away, their faces serious and unyielding. Karen's eyes widened in pure panic, her jaw slack and hands trembling as she clutched her purse tightly. The web of lies she'd spun was unraveling faster than she could breathe. Her carefully crafted image, her control over everything, crumbling right before everyone's eyes. She knew she'd been caught, completely exposed, and there was no way out now. Suddenly, she lunged forward, her movements frantic and unpredictable. Her hand shot into her purse, trembling violently, clutching something small and shiny. My heart hammered in my chest. Was she about to pull out a weapon? A hidden device? I instinctively took a step back, my mind racing. But before I could react further, she pulled out her phone, her last desperate weapon, and pressed record. Her face twisted with madness, eyes wild, lips trembling as she tried to spin her story, to cling to whatever shred of control she had left. The crowd surged closer, sensing the storm. Karen's frantic whispers filled the air, her voice shaky and broken. She was trying to explain, to justify, to manipulate, but her words only confirmed what everyone already saw. Her own posts, her confessions, her manipulations, they all painted her as the villain. She was cornered, unmasked and powerless. From the side, a loud voice boomed through the tense silence. It was Mr. Jennings, the old neighbor, pushing through the crowd with a thick folder clutched in his hand. His voice was firm, unwavering. "I have more evidence," he announced loudly, holding up the folder. "Emails, photos, testimonies. Karen's been breaking rules for years without anyone stopping her, and I've got the proof." The crowd's eyes flicked to him, then back to Karen. Her face drained of all color. She tried to speak, to deny, but her voice cracked under the weight of truth. Her trembling hands dropped her phone slightly, but she couldn't hide the guilty look in her eyes. Her mask was slipping away. I stepped forward, my voice calm but powerful, cutting through the chaos. "It's over, Karen. Your lies, your manipulations, they're exposed now. This neighborhood deserves honesty, not deception, and trust me, this is only the beginning." My words echoed in the tense air, firm and unwavering. The officials nodded silently, acknowledging the truth. The crowd began to murmur, some in shock, some in agreement. It was clear, they had seen enough. Justice was finally catching up. Karen, once so confident and in control, now looked like a trapped animal, helpless, defeated, broken. I looked directly at her, a cold, steady smile forming. "You tried to hide behind your rules, your HOA, your fake kindness, but honesty always wins. And everyone here just saw what you really are, a manipulative liar." My words hit hard, leaving everyone stunned. A ripple of shock spread through the crowd. The truth was out. No more masks, no more lies. Karen's petty reign of tyranny was over. The neighborhood was waking up, realizing they'd been fooled for too long. Then, I did something nobody expected, something that made the entire scene freeze in disbelief. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a small remote, and pressed a button. The ground beneath our feet rumbled ominously. Suddenly, a trapdoor slid open, revealing a dark, underground tunnel hidden beneath the grass, built in secret. An escape, route I'd prepared long ago. The crowd gasped as the tunnel revealed itself. It was a secret pathway, a symbol of everything I'd been planning in silence. I looked directly into Karen's eyes, now filled with terror, and spoke softly but with unmistakable authority. "This neighborhood's future is mine now. And I'm not done, not by a long shot." Without hesitation, I stepped into the darkness, the trapdoor sealing behind me. I knew this wasn't just about winning a fight. It was about changing everything. Karen's lies had been exposed, and I had just transformed from a victim into a force of unstoppable justice. As I disappeared into the shadows, I felt a surge of power and purpose. This was just the beginning. The old ways were gone. A new era was dawning, one built on truth, courage, and daring. I smiled for the first time in days, knowing deep in my heart that I had just set something unbreakable into motion. a story that would be remembered forever. And as the tunnel disappeared into the darkness, I whispered to myself, knowing that this moment marked the start of something much bigger. The world would never forget what had happened here. The lies, the secrets, the courage. It all led to this unforgettable ending. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that nothing would ever be the same again.